Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, we are going to strip down this Washington Commanders roster heading into the 2026 offseason. I think we all agree that this season is all but over in terms of the chances of making the NFL playoffs. But now we can look ahead to the future here and what this team can do heading into next offseason to start this rebuild up and hopefully get this team back into not only playoff, but maybe even title contention heading into the 2026 season. Welcome into the show, guys. I really do appreciate you guys stopping by and talk some Commanders football with us here today. Make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you guys want more early off-season type of content. If you guys want us to hit cut candidates and trade candidates and mock drafts and all this stuff that we usually don't hit until the off-season, but get to them earlier this year because the Commander season is over, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already to help support the show and let us know you want more of this early off-season content. So the big question that Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and everybody involved with rebuilding this Commanders roster is going to have to answer heading into this offseason is, do we still want to have a win-now posture heading into 2026, or are we going to completely embrace a rebuild, get rid of most of our veteran players in order to get draft picks and to inject this team with a bunch of new young players from those draft picks that you get in return for veteran talent? And I think what they're going to do is that they're going to choose the win-now path. And I think the reason for that is that there is still a lot of good veteran talent on this roster, and you also have a star quarterback in Jayden Daniels under contract on his rookie deal, and you just only get so many years of that rookie contract to take advantage of. And if all of a sudden here you trade Laremy Tunsil and you trade Daron Payne, you trade all the bigger kind of contracts and veteran players to get more draft capital, then it's going to take a couple of years to build this thing back up to where you could potentially compete for a Super Bowl. And by that point, you're going to have to pay Jayden Daniels a crap ton of money, and you kind of waste this opportunity here to make the most of the low cap hits that Jayden Daniels will have over the next several seasons. So I do think that they're going to do like a kind of retooling. I don't think it's going to be a true rebuild, but I think that they will get rid of some of the older veteran talent on this team that's worth getting rid of, but they'll keep some veterans, and they'll try and do some stuff via trade and via free agency next year, as well as bringing in some new players in the NFL draft as well to try and get this team to compete in 2026. So coming up here on the Commanders Report, I'm going to let you guys know exactly how I would kind of break down this roster heading into this offseason, getting this team ready for a very important NFL free agency period in 2026, and maybe make some trades, and of course the NFL draft. But before we get into how I would handle this Commanders roster, which guys I would keep, which guys I would cut and get rid of and let walk in free agency, let me know down there in the comments section. What say you? What should the Commanders do in 2026? Should they continue to try and win now, type W, or do you think they should completely embrace a full rebuild and completely tear this thing down, type R for rebuild? That'll be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Harry's. And while I tell you about our sponsor, go down there in the comment section and answer today's pinned question. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And I don't have to tell you guys that maneuvering the men's razor space nowadays is a complete nightmare. The quality products are always super expensive, and refills are just as ridiculously expensive. And then when you try and save a little bit of money, you get stuck with dull razors that you can only really use once and irritate your skin. It's exactly why I switched to Harry's Plus, and I haven't looked back since. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for closer, smoother shaves, and a weighted metal handle, which is Harry's heaviest handle ever, for added control and comfort. But I think the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen. And because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you, the customer. And if you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right, no questions asked. The risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. And I actually brought my Harry's Plus razor with me here today just to show you guys that I actually do use and love this product. I love all of Harry's products, whether it's their post-shave balm, whether it's their shaving gel. I've been using Harry's ever since college because I didn't like using the inexpensive stuff that would cut your skin and irritate your skin, do all that stuff, and you could only use it once. You'd have to continuously get new razors. But I also didn't want to completely break the bank because I didn't have any money. So Harry's was the perfect solution for me, and I love the metal handle of Harry's Plus. It gives you that extra premium quality feel. Plus, the German engineered blades that Harry's uses in all of their products gives you a barbershop quality shave without having to break the bank. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. A big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of the Commanders Report. So we'll start with this, and we'll start with where the Commanders currently sit in terms of how much projected cap space they're going to have heading into the 2026 offseason, which right now, according to Over the Cap, is sitting at just over $81.9 million. And just that in its own right is quite a bit. But as we know, teams do certain maneuvers, cutting players, trading players away, all that stuff to get more cap space. And, last year the Commanders had over $100 million to spend in free agency and on veteran players. Honestly, they didn't use a whole lot of it. They probably should have used more of that cap space to get better players than they ended up getting. But there's certainly an opportunity to get back to over $100 million in cap space to spend. And one of the easiest moves that the Commanders can make is cut Marshawn Lattimore. And, of course, Lattimore has a serious injury. It's going to keep him out for the rest of this season and, frankly, just hasn't played well enough to warrant the cap hit that the Commanders would be taking on by keeping him on the roster next season. So you cut him, you save $18.5 million. That gets you right around that $100 million mark as it is. And there's some other moves out there that you could consider if you want to add even more cap space heading into the 2026 offseason. You could extend Laremy Tunsil. He's just got one more year left on his deal after this year, and, extensions can lower the cap hit for Laremy Tunsil there. You could also extend Daron Payne, or you could trade him. It's certainly possible Daron looks for a contract extension this offseason. So depending on if you see a long-term future still with Payne, who is getting older at this point, you can either extend him or trade him to lower the cap figure for him. Then you could trade or cut Frankie Luvu. Frankly, Luvu has taken a big step down this year compared to what he was for this defense last year. I'm sure there might be some teams out there that might still see some value in him, and you could maybe get like a late day 3 draft pick in a trade for him, or you can just cut him and save about a little bit over $5 million in cap next year, and then you can trade or cut Quan Martin. Now, Quan has been so bad this year, I would be shocked if anybody is willing to trade for him, but you could cut bait with him and save some money by doing so. Now let's shift our focus here to some of the free agents that the Commanders are going to have next offseason and the guys that I would probably let walk. All right, Deebo Samuel, he's a decent player, but for somebody that's going to be 30, and he's an aging player, I don't want to pay 2 receivers past the age of 30, big contracts. And I think Deebo will command, a decent amount of money, maybe like $15 to $20 million on the open market next year. I think it's just better to go and maybe draft a wide receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin for the future, and someone that can maybe be your future wide receiver 1. Don't see Deebo sticking around past this season. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to trade him before the trade deadline this year. But then Bobby Wagner, I think he's going to retire. You can just tell that he's done. Then Zach Ertz, another guy that might retire, doesn't really do anything after the catch. He has untimely drops. He's a decent route runner, and he can make some tough catches from time to time. He was a good player for this team last year, but I think that it's time to move on at the tight end position heading into 2026. Von Miller, another guy that might retire, too old. I think you got to get rid of him. Austin Ekeler, an older, aging player that was already on the decline, coming off an Achilles injury. No, thank you. Then you got Andrew Wylie, who has not been great for this team for many seasons now. He's a decent backup player and a depth piece, but I would rather have somebody else pay him next offseason. Noah Brown can't stay healthy. See ya. No Igbinoghene, another former starter for this team, but honestly, I just don't see a long-term future with him. Eddie Goldman's had a pretty decent season this year, but he's another guy that might retire. Look at all these guys that might retire, guys. That's how old this Commanders roster is this season. And then Darnell Savage, who they brought in this year on a one-year deal, honestly hasn't played well enough for me to keep him around. But then there's some guys that I would consider bringing back for the right price tag. And I wouldn't say any of these guys are like high-impact type of players, but they're all players that I think can be legitimate contributors to a winning football team. If the Commanders can bring in the right amount of talent in free agency and in the draft next offseason. Tress Way, still a really good punter. Jacob Martin has proven his worth this year, in my opinion, on the Commanders' defense. Chris Rodriguez Jr. and Jeremy McNichols both playing pretty darn good ball right now. Dietrich Wise was playing really good ball before he got his season-ending injury. Now, depending on how bad his injury is, maybe you decide to let him go and let somebody else pay him in free agency next year, but I think you can get him on a pretty team-friendly contract for a starting-level defensive end. Chris Paul, I think, has played pretty darn well at left guard this season. If he continues that with his current trajectory, I would bring him back, especially for the right price tag. Marcus Mariota, one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. I absolutely want him back if he's willing to come back here to Washington. And then Jonathan Jones, I think in his role as kind of like a depth piece that can play outside or inside, a good veteran player where if there's an injury, you can trust him at either one of those spots. I think he's proving right now that he is still a quality player. Even though I wouldn't have him as a starter on this defense heading into next year, if you can get him at a backup level contract, I would bring him back next season. So now that we've stripped this roster down, okay, this is what we're looking at in terms of what this roster and what the lineup would look like once we get to free agency next spring. All right, you got Jaden Daniels obviously at quarterback, Laremy Tunsil maybe on a new extension there at left tackle, Chris Paul, you bring him back and re-sign him. He's your starting left guard. Tyler Biadasz is still your starting center. Sam Cosmi still your starting right guard. And then you're expecting a big year 2 leap from Josh Conerly Jr., your first-round pick here in 2025. Terry McLaurin, of course, would be the projected wide receiver 1. And then because we're letting Deebo and Noah Brown walk, that means, you're pretty stripped down at the wide receiver position, but I think among the guys that would remain, Luke McCaffrey would probably be the next guy up. Then Ben Sinnott and John Bates would be the next guys up at the tight end position with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And maybe it's Chris Rodriguez Jr., but right now I think Bill would probably be the presumed number 1 running back for this team heading into next year, even if they bring Chris back. So on the offensive side of the ball, I think what you're looking at in terms of positions that you're going to be looking for upgrades at, definitely wide receiver. Not only might you bring in like a veteran player, but you might draft 1 or even 2 wide receivers. Like it really is that big of a need, especially probably early in the draft. You probably want to find your future number 1 wide receiver once Terry McLaurin's current contract is up. You want somebody that can take the reins. Interior offensive line, I think you can probably upgrade at either center or left guard, given the positions that they would be projected to have. The tight end position, Ben Sinnott, depending on how you feel about him. John Bates is more of a true blocking tight end. If you want to go get a receiving tight end, that could be something the Commanders go searching for. And then running back, depending on if they bring back Chris Rodriguez Jr., Jeremy McNichols, they could look for a premier number 1 running back. That's certainly a possibility. We've seen what Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are able to do in Baltimore. If you can pair Jaden Daniels up with like a legitimate top-end running back, that could be something that's really fun here in Washington. But honestly, guys, I think that the area on this team that needs a full-blown rebuild is the defensive side of the ball. So we can take a look at the guys that I'm keeping around and, the stripped-down version of this defensive line. Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, both would be expected to come back in this scenario. Daron Payne, depending on if they trade him or not, it's going to be kind of depend on if he wants a new contract, to be completely honest with you. And then, of course, Javon Kinlaw on a multi-year deal will be back next year as well. But I do think you certainly need to get younger on this defensive line heading forward into future years. Then at the linebacker position, you really need help here, guys. Like Jordan McGee, maybe he's one of your starters next year, and I don't know how confident I would be in Ali Cahill or Kane Medrano. I know they're athletic guys that have shown some promise, but they haven't really seen the field a whole lot at off-ball linebacker, so I really think linebacker is going to be a big position that this team's going to have to address next offseason. And then heading into 2026, this is what we're looking at in the secondary heading into free agency in my plan here, where you got Trey Amos and Mike Sainristil as your two outside guys. I think that can be a really good duo for the next several years here in Washington. Sainristil is really ideal for a number 2 cornerback's position there on the outside. I think Amos really showed a lot of good stuff in coverage this year. Now, right now, because you're letting go of Igbinoghene and Sainristil, your nickel this year, is moving outside, that would mean Will Harris would be projected to be your starting nickel, if they don't cut him, and then Percy Butler and Jeremy Reeves would be at safety. So I don't really feel great about any of those 3 positions, which is why I think that, on defense, you're going to have to get a full-scale, facelift. You're not going to have Bobby Wagner next year. They might let go of Frankie Luvu, as we discussed. So you're going to maybe need to replace both off-ball linebacker positions in the starting lineup. I think you're going to have to replace both safety spots. Will Harris, even when he was playing, wasn't playing great. Quan Martin has been a disaster, and the backups that they have, I don't see them starting for this team moving forward. So you might need to replace both safety spots, both linebacker spots, probably your nickel position as well. They might put Will Harris there next year. That would be an intriguing idea, but you could certainly add a nickel back. And then I think you do need more depth at defensive end and defensive tackle, particularly when it comes to the draft and getting younger players to be the future at those given positions. So I do think this defense is going to need a major retooling this offseason. The offense, you need a couple pieces. Wide receiver, you could certainly add to that group, but I really think the area that this team really needs to focus on this offseason is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So take your pick for me down there in the comment section. If you had to pick the 3 positions that the Commanders really need to address this offseason, what are the top 3? For me, I would probably say wide receiver. Talking about supplementary receivers, okay? So wide receiver 2 and 3. I would probably say safety, and I would say linebacker. Those are the 3 positions that they absolutely need to address in 2026. But let me know your 3 down there in the comment section. That'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report. Make sure you click that subscribe button because we're going to get you guys covered with cut candidates, with trade candidates, with mock drafts, getting you guys ready for the 2026 offseason. It's going to be a big one for Adam Peters and this franchise, so make sure you guys get yourselves ready for that by clicking that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, hail to the Commanders.